started. My name is Jonathan Stein. I am a master's student at the Goldman School of Public Policy here at UC Berkeley, as well as the head of the brand new student chapter of Common Cause. Find us on Facebook. Thank you very much for coming to today's event on whether or not, we can keep those lights on for a minute while I'm up here. Thank you so much for coming on whether or not rewriting the California Constitution will be the solution to our problems. In May of this year, conservative columnist George Will wrote in the Washington Post, quote, "What actually ails California is centrist evasions. The state's crisis is being caused by moderation, understood as splitting the difference between extreme liberalism and hyperliberalism, a reasonableness that merely moderates the speed at which the ever-expanding public sector suffocates the private sector." He then goes on to say a lot of nasty things about us, including our Republicans, and then says, "California has become liberalism's laboratory, in which the case for fiscal conservatism is being confirmed. The state is a slow learner, and hence will remain a drag on the nation's economy. But it will be a net benefit to the nation if the federal government and other state governments profit from California's negative example." Unfortunately, our great state's failures cannot be described quite so simply. If California found itself in a state of dysfunction and near insolvency simply because of the failure of liberals and of liberalism, then the solutions would be easy. We could change our political leadership or our political philosophy. Today's speakers will discuss how our problems run deeper to the very structure of California's government. They will note the problems caused by our initiative system, our unique two-thirds requirement for passing a budget in the State House, and the way gerrymandering and term limits have led to polarization and paralysis in the state legislature. And hopefully they'll be able to connect those issues to your rising fees. Our first speaker is Henry Brady. Professor Brady is the dean of the Goldman School of Public Policy here at UC Berkeley, where he first began teaching in 1978. He is president of the American Political Science Association and was director of UC Berkeley's Survey Research Center from 1998 to 2009. Prior to coming to UC Berkeley, Dean Brady worked for 4 years in Washington, D.C., including a stint as a staff member for the Nixon White House, which he loves having mentioned, and prior to that, got his 2 PhDs from MIT. Elizabeth Hill retired from state service in 2009 after 32 years at the Legislative Analyst Office. The LAO is a nonpartisan fiscal advisor to all 120 members of the state legislature. As head of the office for the last 22 years of her career, Hill initiated long-term fiscal forecasts and oversaw the preparation of analyses of the state budget and all initiatives and ballot measures. During her tenure, she served for 2 years on the Constitution Revision Commission. She graduated from the Goldman School in 1975 and currently serves on its advisory board. Ted Lempert is the president of Children Now, a national research and advocacy organization based in Oakland. He's also a lecturer in the political science department here at Berkeley. Mr. Lempert was a California State Assembly member representing San Mateo and Santa Clara counties from 1996 to 2000, and before that from 88 to 92. He graduated, unfortunately, from Princeton University's Public Policy School, the Woodrow Wilson School, and even more unfortunately earned his law degree at Stanford. So welcome. John Grubb is the Senior Vice President of the Bay Area Council and a member of Repair California. John is responsible for the management of daily activities in the effort to convene a California Constitutional Convention, including communications, legal work, and the political campaign. John is also the Chairman Emeritus of the San Francisco Public Relations Roundtable and has volunteered his time on numerous state and local campaigns. A Vanderbilt University graduate, he and his wife Corin live in San Anselmo with their daughter Natasha and their son Jack. Thank you to all of our panelists for being here with us. We're honored that you could join us. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the following groups and people: Adrian Covert at Repair California, all of my members at Common Cause. We put in countless hours, especially Ali Jarsman, Megan Cummings, Alan Eder and Politics and Public Policy, the American Constitution Society, the Graduate Assembly, and the Bolt Hall Democrats, without whom this event wouldn't be possible. Also a special thank you to Will Smelko, Danny Haber, and the ASUC leadership. One last note: as we know, this is an ongoing issue that cannot be covered in one afternoon. Because of this, 2 of the co-sponsors of today's event, the Bolt Hall Democrats and the American Constitution Society, are hosting a series of events this spring on this subject. If you'd like to know more, we encourage you to visit their booth outside the building and sign up on their list. With that, let's begin. Each of our panelists will speak, and then the students have their opportunity. Students assembled have an opportunity to ask questions. Dean Brady.
So I'm going to try to start by connecting what we're talking about to, in fact, your rising fees. So let's start with funding for higher education in the state of California. This shows you from 1984 to 2008, the percentage of the general fund expenditures that went for 4 different things. The pink line is for corrections, criminal justice. And you can see that's going up in percentage of the total budget. The ones that are going down are ones for higher education. The one for UC is the dark blue one. You can see that's going down. It used to be in 1984 that, in fact, the corrections, criminal justice budget was a larger fraction of the general fund expenditures a smaller fraction than UC, but now it's clearly a much larger fraction, almost 3 times larger. So you can see here that CSU, UC, community colleges have fared slightly better because of Prop 98 and its relationship to the 40% requirement of the general fund expenditures going towards not just K through 12, but K through 14 through the community colleges. But you can see immediately there has been a diminution of support for the UC system. By the way, at the same time, and these are data from '92 to the present, the number of students in the UC system, this is undergraduates plus graduate students, has gone from about 160,000 to over 220,000. So that the number of students has gone up considerably. And needless to say, that leads to the following conclusions about higher education. Total funding has gone down as a percentage of general funds, as I've shown you. Total funding has gone down in real terms. I didn't show you that, but that's true as well. Funding per student has gone down in 2008 dollars from about $17,000 in 1992 to under $12,000 in 2008. I did this in a very simple way, and it varies from some other web pages that have different numbers, but this is one way to do it. And the important thing here is to see that funding per student has gone down dramatically for the UC system. Yet almost everybody agrees that a talented, well-trained workforce is imperative for California in the future. And in fact, there are some studies that suggest that we're going to have about a 20% gap in trained workers in the state of California over the next 10 or 15 years. So that we're going to have a lack of people who are college educated, well-trained, so that they can help fuel the economy of California. So what's the problem? How did we get here? How do we get such poor public policy? Well, let's start with the fiscal problem. California relies upon revenues that are particularly sensitive. Economists say elastic with respect to economic conditions. We have a very progressive income tax, so that in good times it brings in lots of money. In bad times it doesn't bring in so much. And then we have a smaller than average proportion of our tax revenue that comes from property tax because of Prop 13. Property taxes tend to be less elastic. So we have a very up and down kind of tax system. Indeed, this gives you some sense of that. This is revenues and expenditures for various administrations here in California. The important thing is to look at the Davis and Schwarzenegger administrations to notice the gap between expenditures in the green and revenues in the red. So we get these enormous budget gaps, but also just the ups and downs that we're getting. California, the Department of Finance estimates, for example, that in this most recent recession, that we've had a departure from what the expected revenues were, which is the dark black line, to much less in the way of revenues, which is the red dotted line, because of the recession. So we get this enormous gap between what was expected and what in fact we get. And then California's budget gap will be the 3rd largest among states with projected budget deficits in 2009-10. So California's got a fiscal crisis fueled by its tax system and by the ups and downs, of course, of the economy. So, very elastic tax system. We also have, in addition to that, propositions which heavily constrain spending. Proposition 98 that I've already mentioned with respect to K through 12 and community college funding. Many other propositions which constrain spending, something Liz Hill can tell you a lot about, and how this creates a situation where it's very hard to cut budgets because so much is constrained already in terms of what you must do. So hence we have spending constrained, revenues volatile. That is not a good recipe in terms of fiscal health. But the problem goes deeper. It's not just a fiscal problem. It's also a deep, profound